hello everyone, and welcome to Conversations with the Dean. I'm Turney Stevens, Dean of the College of Business at Lipscomb University, and our guest today is old DW, Darrell Waltrip. Man, what a thrill it is, Darrell, to have you on the Lipscomb campus.
Hey, nice to be here, man. I've heard a lot about this program you put together and how successful it's been. And you know, when I hear about success, I say I want to be a part of that. So thank you for having me.
Well, I think we can learn from you as far as success is concerned. And gosh, I was reading the bio here a few minutes ago. 84 NASCAR Winston Cup victories, tied for third on the all-time list, 37 Super Speedway victories, 7th on the all-time list, 59 Winston Cup poles, 23 Super Speedway poles, won the 1989 Daytona 500. Here's one that caught my eye. First Winston Cup driver to earn $10 million, and that happened on February 18, 1990. What a career you've had.
Yeah, the $10 million now is just sort of pocket change for these guys. You know, last year our champion, Tony Stewart, for the year took home $15 million. The championship, when I won it, paid $250,000 to win. Last year, the champion's check was $5.5 million. So the sport it's changed dramatically since my heyday. They still do the same thing. You know, they still go around in circles. They drop a green, they drop the checkered. It's the same. It's the same sport, but sport has changed a lot. And like all records and all numbers. You know, that was a big deal at the time.
Sure.
And now they look at that and they say, man, that's all he ever won. So, but I have no complaints. I had a wonderful career, accomplished everything I could ever imagine, and the sport's been good to me. So I'm very proud of what I've done.
And Darrell, I think what makes it very interesting for us here at Lipscomb, since we're a Christ-centered institution, is that you're a man of faith, and you've been able to walk that faith through it all.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in a world that doesn't always place a lot of emphasis on faith, and I wonder, you know, how have you been able to keep your priorities focused?
Yeah. First of all, I have to tell you how I got there. I don't think I've ever heard an athlete or probably anybody say that they didn't grow up in a Christian home. I think we all did, as far as I can tell. My mom and dad, my dad was a deacon in the church. I went to church every Wednesday night and every Sunday, and so we went to church a lot. But as I grew older, and I went away from God. I went away from the Lord, and because I was more concerned about my career and me. It really was an all about me thing, and so my faith wasn't important to me. And I was driving for Junior Johnson. And there was a guy named Roger that worked in the parts department at Junior's, and I was winning a lot of races. And I was being very successful. And the guy came up to me one day back in the shop, and he said, "Hey," he said, "do you ever think about giving God any of the glory for your success?" I said, "Do what?" He said, "You know, there's a lot of people." He said, "I'm a Christian. There's a lot of Christians that follow this sport. You should think about that. You should think about the next time you win a race that you didn't do it by yourself. God gave you that talent. God gave you that opportunity, and you ought to at least give Him some praise for it." I said, yeah, all right. No, don't worry. I'll think about it. Lo and behold, I won the race that next Sunday, and as I pulled into Victory Circle, and I'm putting on my Mountain Dew hat, and that Roger's voice just popped in my head. Give God some glory for this victory, because I really shouldn't have won that race. It was kind of one of those that I just came from behind, got it right at the finish, and a lot of people said, "How did he do that?" And so I got out of the car, and the first thing I said, "I want to thank the good Lord for a safe race today." And I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. Monday comes, and after the race, Tuesday comes, and I start getting all these people telling me, say, "Hey man, I didn't know you were a Christian." And of course, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not, you know, but the perception was, you gave the Lord some credit for that win yesterday. Way to go, man. Congratulations. Well, that started to work on me a little bit. And as time went by, every time I won, I'd get out of the car and I'd say, "I want to thank the Lord for a safe race." Matter of fact, just being kind of a little bit obnoxious, I guess, I said I wanted to thank God, Goodyear, and Gatorade, and you know, at the banquet one year. So, but the story is, in 1983, I had a pretty hard wreck at Daytona, and the Lord had been working on me, and He hadn't won me over yet, but He was working on me, and I hit the wall pretty hard at Daytona, and it knocked me out, and I when I came to, I was in the hospital and I was kind of dazed a little bit and didn't really know what had happened. A little bit of time went by and so it really was a wake-up call. And so I started to really think more about my faith and about where I was going and what I was doing, and that I could actually I could get killed doing this. And I don't think I had my priorities right. And so I really started to work hard at going to church. Cortez Cooper was the pastor here at First Christ Pres. He became a good friend, and in July of '83, he led me to the Lord, and it was an amazing moment. And people always said, well, how did that happen? I said, well, I hit the wall and it knocked me conscious. And I said, and from that point on, and I'll tell anybody that has a profession of faith, or if they're even on the fence and they're not sure, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. That walk, the talk's easy, but that walk is hard. And I always like to say, you may be the only Bible anybody ever reads. And that's really kind of an athlete's role, I think. People they judge you by what you do more than what you say. And so you have an amazing platform. A lot of people love you, follow you, emulate you. So you have a great responsibility, but you also have a great platform. And so I've been able to take my life lessons and parlay those into a strong profession of faith. I have a Bible study in my home every Tuesday morning. I have had for 25 years. I'm the chairman of the board of Motor Racing Outreach, our ministry at the track, and I love the Lord. And I love telling people that. My favorite story is the Dale Earnhardt story, because people always say, I'm not worried about that. I'll get to that. I'll get around to it. And I always say, well, you know what? You might not want to put that off, because you think when Dale was headed for the wall at 180 miles an hour that he had time to ask the Lord to forgive him and for the Lord to come into his life? I said, do you think he had time right at that moment? I don't think so.
Too late at that point.
It's too late.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that day and that incident, because we can't possibly let this 30 minutes go by without me asking you about that. That was important.
You have to, don't you?
I have to, and I want to hear you tell that story. That day was important for a lot of reasons, not just because that happened to be the day Dale Earnhardt died, but also because it was your first day on television, I think, and your brother happened to win that race. Yeah,
I got up that morning. It's February the 18th, and I got up that morning. It was 2001, and for the first time in my life, from the time I was 12 years old until that morning, every Sunday I'd put on a helmet and raced my whole life. So it was a huge change, and trading a helmet for a headset was something I'd never envisioned that I would do. I thought I would race until the day I died, or until I got so old I couldn't. But I had a golden opportunity to come along with Fox Sports. My career was at the end of my time. As I always like to tell people, they say, it looks like your era's over, and I said, yeah, it is, but at least I had one. So I was there, and it was the greatest thing ever. It was the greatest move. Quit racing, take up the broadcast profession, and so I knew that morning. I looked in the mirror and I said, today is going to be a day I'll never forget. And
it turned out to be really prophetic, didn't it?
It did, and I didn't think about I had no way of knowing what was going to happen. I knew my brother was running very well. He was driving for Dale Earnhardt, DEI. Dale Jr. was driving for Dale, and then Dale, they had 3 cars. I actually had 4. Steve Park was in the race. And they were running well. And my brother had told me the night before, he and I had dinner together, and we're chatting about the race, and I said, come on, man. Just think, you win this race tomorrow, I'm in a TV booth. It's my first time in a TV booth. That would be your first win. What a great way to kick off my career in television. What a great day for you to win your first race, the Daytona 500. So we're fantasizing about all this, and yeah, right, bro, I'm with you. Maybe I can do it. Hopefully I can pull it off. Well, lo and behold, the race starts, and sure enough, Dale and Michael and Dale Jr., all 3 are running great. And they're running up front, and it's an exciting race. It's the best Daytona 500 we had seen in years. A lot of passing, lead changes, record speed up to the first 200 or 300 miles there. So it was going great, and that was good news for me and Larry Mack and Mike Joy, because me and Larry Mack are rookies. We'd never been in the TV booth doing a race. We'd always been on pit road or in the race car. And so having a great race made our job pretty easy. So this race is rolling along, and man, we're having a ball, and it's going over. This is fun. This is really fun doing this TV stuff, because you're getting to talk about what you love.
Yeah.
Gets down near the end of the race and they have a big crash. Imagine that. Bunch of cars wrecked, about 10 cars, all torn up. There, cars, carnage everywhere. They had to stop the race. About 30 laps to go in the race, and they stopped the cars on the back straightaway, and Michael was running first, Dale Jr. was running second, and Dale Sr. was running third when they stopped the cars. Mm-hmm. There was some conversation between Dale Jr. and Michael and Dale Sr. through the spotters. They were telling, Dale Sr. was saying, I want y'all to do this, I want y'all to, he was orchestrating the finish of the race. And they go back to green, and this race is unfolding just like Dale said it would. Michael was leading, Dale Jr. running second, and Dale was running third, but he was playing defense. He was blocking. Sterling Marlin, my neighbor, down in Columbia, Sterling had a fast car, and Sterling was trying to get by Dale, and Dale had cut him off on the inside, and Sterling had tried, and Dale run him up the hill on the outside, and here comes Rusty Wallace and Kenny Schrader and all these guys, but Dale just keeps running. I mean, he's all over the racetrack, and I told Larry McReynolds, my booth mate, I said, if Dale keeps driving like that, somebody's going to wreck him. He can't keep blocking people like that. And sure enough, white flags in the air, and all the time I'm thinking, there ain't no way my brother's going to win this race. He ain't never won one before. How could he win this one? White flags in the air. Dale Jr.'s running second. Michael's running first. Dale's holding everybody at bay. And they go down in the first turn, and I think, oh, my God, I think my brother's got a shot at winning this thing. No. Dale Jr. he'll pass him down the back. He'll drag everybody with him, and Michael will finish 15th. Sure enough, they come off turn 2, and Dale Jr. and Michael, they got a bit of a gap between third and the rest of the field. And by the halfway down the back, it's pretty obvious my brother's going to win this race. And, man, I'm getting excited. I mean, I can't believe it. I'm doing TV. My brother's going to win the race. This is just like we planned it. They go in the third turn, and Dale Jr. and Michael come off turn 4, and they got a comfortable lead, no pressure. Watching Michael, I'm getting all excited. Come on, Mikey. And he's coming to the line, and as they come off turn 4, I see the wreck behind them, and I saw the 3-car go up the hill and hit the wall, but I'm still focused on watching Michael come to the line because he's going to win this race. Checkered flag, he wins the race. Man, we're all excited. I'm talking to him on the radio. Then we do a replay of what happened on the last lap. Because initially I thought, oh, Dale's all right. He's had wrecks like that before. He's going to be mad. He's going to be ticked off because Sterling had bumped him a little bit. He's going to be ticked off, but I think he's all right. So we're still in the celebrating mode. Then we go to a replay. And when I saw the replay, I literally thought I was going to throw up. Mm-hmm. Cars, and if you've never driven one, you maybe can't imagine, but he got clipped in the left rear, and the car got a little loose, and at Daytona it went down and it hit the flat part of the track nose first. Well, when that happens, it just launches that car back up the track, and that's what happened to Dale. He left front hit the apron, shot him up the track, and he hit the outside wall, probably around 165, 70 miles an hour. But at the same time, and it was kind of a double whammy, he hits the wall and gets hit by Kenny Schrader all at the same time. So it was I mean, just, I can only imagine what it must have felt like. But after I saw that replay, I got worried. I said, boys, I think we might have a problem. I said, I think Dale's hurt. I didn't know at that time that he was dead, but I knew he was hurt. And then as time went, we had to go off the air, and they showed the most wearisome picture I think I've ever seen in my life. The ambulance going down the street there, and Highway 92 there in front of the racetrack, going up the street, wrong way, no cars anywhere, road was blocked, and it wasn't going very fast. It was just going up the road like that long black train.
And you knew that was a bad sign.
And I said, that's not good.
Yeah.
And so I still don't know anything for sure. And the race is over with. We're off the air, and we have to leave. We don't know. We'll give you a follow-up later when we find out. A guy that worked for me, his name's Big Andy. He was a sheriff down in Daytona, a deputy sheriff. Was my escort. We were going to go to be with my brother to celebrate. Mm-hmm. So we go off the air. I take my headset off. Mike and Larry and I talk, and I look up at the top of the stairs. Big Andy's he's a tough guy. And he's standing at the top of the stairs, shaking his head, and tears coming down his face. I said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" He said, "Got to go to the hospital." I said, "Is it bad?" And he couldn't even answer. He couldn't answer me. And so he just took me by the arm, and we got down and got in the car. And Andy said his wife, Mary Ann, worked in the emergency room at the hospital. He said he didn't make it. It just was. It's like a bad dream. Even when we got to the hospital, and I went in to see Dale. Last thing, went in to see Dale. It's still like I thought he's going to wake up. That's Superman. Mm-hmm. You know, he's been in wrecks a lot worse than this. Mm-hmm. He's going to come around. He's going to be okay. But he wasn't going to be okay. And it's a long story, I know, but it was a long day, and it just had a huge impact on me and a lot of millions of people around, not just the racing community, but around the world. I mean, the man's picture was on the front of Time magazine. I don't think any of us realized what a huge hero icon he was, mm-hmm. not just in racing, but around the world.
And the race itself, the Daytona 500, for viewers that don't know this, is essentially the Super Bowl
it's our
of
biggest
NASCAR racing. It happens to be the very first race as opposed to the end of the season. But it's the biggest event, and this was arguably the biggest star. I guess it would be like a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady getting killed in a Super Bowl with a vicious hit from a linebacker.
Yeah.
So it was unbelievably tragic. Yeah. And you were broadcasting your first race, but you took it upon yourself, if I understand what happened in the days and weeks after that, to insist that NASCAR change their safety standards.
Yeah.
And they did, in fact, implement much stricter safety rules to prevent the head injury that most people think is what killed.
Yeah, he snapped a brain. This was the third incident in a row. We had lost Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin, and then Dale, mm-hmm. all from the same injury, brainstem, mm-hmm. snaps your brainstem. Mm-hmm. And there was a device called the Hans device, a head and neck restraint system, that had been introduced into the sport a year before this incident. Nobody liked it. It's very uncomfortable. It just went up the back of your helmet. It sat on your shoulders. You snugged it down with a seat belt, and it had two tethers that would keep your head from going forward, mm-hmm. keep from snapping your head forward. Guys had tried it. Nobody liked it. It's very uncomfortable. It sat on top of your shoulders. It was hurt, and you just didn't like it. It was it restricted you. Drivers like to be able to look around and move around, and this thing restricted you. So nobody was really that excited about using it. But test data had shown that it would save people's lives. And NASCAR had kind of been in their mindset was always safety is our concern, but things like that are left up to the driver. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If a driver wants to use one, then we have no problem with that, but we're not going to mandate it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, drivers they're I don't want to say they're dumb, because they're not, but they're hard-headed. Yeah. And I don't even know if they'd wear a helmet if you didn't make it. and like gloves. Yeah. I mean, it took a guy catching his hands on fire and holding them up, getting out of a race car before they finally mandated that you had to wear gloves. Mm-hmm. And so they're always kind of slow, leaving it up to the driver. And I said, this is one time I made up my mind after Dale's death. I'm going to Rockingham the next week for the race. I'm riding down the road. I'm bawling like a baby. And I'm saying, this got to change. We can't have another driver get hurt when there's a way to prevent it. And so I really went on a mission, not just by myself. There were others that were in the same boat with me, that we all agreed that it has to be mandated. It took about a month, 6 weeks before they finally said, okay, this thing will save your life, it will save drivers, and we're going to mandate it, and you got to wear it. Mm-hmm. And so from that point on, in the middle of 2001, they implemented a mandatory Hans device for everybody. But Stevie, my wife, had always given scriptures to Dale and I to put in our race cars on Sunday morning. Didn't always give them to Dale. First, she always gave them to me because I liked a little something to put on the dash, and they weren't, good luck charms. They had a message. Neil Bonnet got killed at Daytona in '94, I think it was. And Stevie and I are on pit road that Sunday morning after the accident, and she's giving me a note card with the scripture on it. Dale walks by, and Dale's, now, like I told you, we've been frenemies our whole career. We love each other sometimes, we hate each other sometimes. Most of the time we hated each other when we put the helmet on. But anyway, Dale walks by, and Stevie's giving me the scripture, and Dale walks over and he grabs it. And he looks at it and he says, "What's this?" And Stevie said, "I give this to DW to put in his car." Dale said, "Where's mine?" Just out of the blue. Well, Stevie, oh my gosh, she lit up. She said, I'll be right back. And she ran to our pit. She got a note card, and she put a scripture on there, and took it and gave it to Dale, and he put it on his dash. And so from that day on, Dale Earnhardt wouldn't even start the race without that scripture on his dash. And that February the 18th of 2001, that morning, we're having breakfast, and Stevie is anguishing over, do you think I ought to take a scripture to Dale? Because we had no car, there's no reason to be on pit road. Do you think Dale would still like to have the scripture? And I said, honey, you know he would. Just because I'm not racing, you know he still wants that scripture. She said, well, I just can't figure out what to give him today. I said, well, I got to go. You'll think of something. Well, she opened the Bible with the Proverbs 18. The Lord is a strong tower. The righteous will run to it and be safe. So I like that. That's the scripture.
That was on his dash.
That was on his dash when he got killed.
And your wife gave it to him?
Every Sunday.
What a great story.
Does it for Dale Jr. now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What a great story. Darrell, I just can't help but think about the Tennessee Titans. When you see them on the street, most of those guys are just freaks of nature. They're just huge people.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the pro golfers are incredibly athletic looking. Some aren't quite that way. Baseball players, basketball players, when you see how tall Shaquille O'Neal is, it's unbelievable how big a human being he is. You're just an average sized guy. How in the world did a guy like you or me come to drive a car 200 miles an hour and become the best in the world at it? How did that happen?
Well, it's definitely a God thing, because I'm a chicken. I'm a coward. I'm scared of everything, but I'm not scared of a race car. I was always afraid I was going to get hurt. I never would go skiing or in water or snow. I didn't like to go hunting. I was always real cautious. I didn't want to get hurt. But I'd put that helmet on and get in that race car, and I'd drive the wheels off that thing. I'd drive it right up your butt, and it didn't bother me one bit. But
even from your youngest
when
memories?
I was a kid, when the first time I ever got on my go-kart at 12 years old, I went like I was a wild man. I just had an ability. It's like somebody that can sing. I look at somebody that can just sing like with no effort.
Yeah.
I think, how could somebody be so gifted?
Yeah.
Well, that's or swing a golf club, anything that somebody's really good at. That's the way I was with racing. I got on that go-kart. I'd never driven a go-kart. I won the first race I ever ran in. I didn't even know what I was doing. But I was doing it good. I knew that. I was doing it better than those other guys were.
Yeah.
And so it's confidence. You gotta be confident in what you do. And I've always had a large dose of that. I've never lacked for confidence. Intelligence maybe, but not confidence. As somebody told me, so when you're not very smart and you're real confident, that's a real that's ingredients for a real disaster right there.
Well, obviously your brother had the same gift though, because he became a racer just as successful as you. So it must have been, at least in small part, something that your dad instilled in you when he would take you out and inspire you. Tell us the story about how your dad started
I think
you.
Michael just emulated what I did.
Is that right?
I think
Big brother.
If you look at our sport, now you look at a lot of sports, look at the Mannings or any number of brothers that compete. Michael was around racing. My very first race that I won at the Fairground Speedway in Nashville, in Victory Circle, there stands little Mikey, 12 years old, with a big old head of hair at the front of the car, just staring up like, wow, my brother just won a race. My brother just won a NASCAR race. Yeah. And so he was been around it his whole life. He raced go-karts, and so he just kind of followed along and did what I did. My dad's what we call a shade tree mechanic, and there were a lot of them back in the 50s, 60s. My dad thought nothing about pulling the family car under a tree and taking a chain hoist and taking the motor out of the car on a Sunday. I can see my dad and a couple of my uncles, Uncle Harold and a couple of them, they'd pull the car up there, and I'm taking pull this engine out and look at the bearings. So they'd undo everything, pull the engine out, hang it in a tree. They may have a few adult beverages to entertain them while they did it, and pull it all out, clean it all up, put it back in the car, and be ready to go Monday morning when Dad or Mom had to go to work. So my dad was, I wouldn't say he was a great mechanic, but he was mechanically inclined.
Yeah.
And I think that the thing that made racing, what helped me, what got my interest in racing was my grandmother. And you hear that a lot too. But my grandmother she was a little woman. She's about 5 foot tall, weighed about 100 pounds, smoked a cigarette and drank a cup of coffee. Cussed like a sailor. And she loved racing. And my grandfather was a deputy sheriff. And so they would my grandfather would work traffic at the local racetrack on Sundays. Well, my grandfather did not want my grandmother sitting in the grandstand by herself because she'd get in a fight. And so my grandfather would almost made me go to the races with her on Sunday and sit in the grandstand to keep her out of trouble. Mm-hmm. And so that was how I got introduced to racing. I'd go with my grandmother, and she would, she was a G.C. Spencer fan, and if somebody got around GC or if they did something wrong with GC, man, you talking about getting a cussing. They'd get a cussing. We'd go down after the race and look for them. So I went to a lot of races with my grandmother, and it just kind of rubbed off on me. I loved the smell, and I loved the sound, and I loved watching those cars go around that track and dirt flying over the grandstand, and guy getting out and he looked like a raccoon, his little goggles, and be all dirty and black, but right where his eyes are, and a little hard shell helmet with leather straps, and wearing a white shirt and white pants. And I thought, those were my heroes. Mm-hmm. Those were guys that I wanted to grow up and be like that. Mm-hmm. And so I think those early years, 7, 8, 9, 10, those formative years, going to those dirt tracks with my grandmother, being around the cars and getting kind of fascinated by them, and the carbon monoxide, maybe it affected my brain. I don't know.
Now this was all in Owensboro, Kentucky, where you grew up. So how did you make your way from Owensboro to Nashville, where you started winning the weekly races at what I call the Nashville Speedway?
Yes, there was a fellow named P.B. Crowell. P.B. had a trucking company down in Franklin. It was Crowell and Reed, and they had about 15, 18 big tractor trailers that they hauled chickens from Chicago down to Athens, Alabama. That was their route. And PB was a racer. He loved to race. And we had a little track in Owensboro called Whitesville, and we raced on Sunday night in Whitesville. Well, PB was a partier. He liked to have fun. He liked to race. And he had 3 race cars, beautiful cars, 47, 48, and 49. And he was a multi-car team owner when nobody even thought about what that meant. But anyway, he used to come up to Owensboro and race on Sunday night, because that was my track. I owned that. I won every week there, except when PB had come to town, and he'd come to town with these really, really fast, nice cars, and he had kicked my butt. And I had an old 58 Ford with a 427 engine in it. You had to be a nut just to get in it, because you need a tetanus shot to drive it. PB had these slick, nice, well-built Bobby Allison cars, and I was so envious. I said, man, I'd give anything to drive one of those cars. If I had one of those cars, if I was winning everything, even then in my old Ford, but I wanted to race in Nashville. So PB and I became buddies. We go out on the Ohio River. That's where Owensboro is. And they'd ski and drink beer and have a big old time all Sunday afternoon, and they'd go to the racetrack and race on Sunday night. Well, PB got hurt. In 1968, he was testing a new car at the fairgrounds, and something on the back of it broke, and the car flipped. It broke his back. Well, the '69 season started, and about halfway through the year, he thought he'd get back in the car, but it didn't work out. He wasn't able to get back in the car. So he used different drivers at different times, and he called me up one week and said, I need somebody to drive my car this week. You want to drive it? Oh, thank you, Lord. Answered a prayer.
How old were you at that point?
22.
Okay.
I was about 21, 22, I think.
Okay, all right.
Winning everything in Owensboro, but I mean, this was like a big, coming from a little quarter-mile track in Owensboro, it's like coming out of high school and going to college.
Right.
I get an opportunity to drive one of those cars, PBs, which they were winning cars, at the Fairground Speedway in Nashville. And I came down here, and this is something I always am a big believer in. Timing is everything. Mm-hmm. Got to be in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. And then you got to be smart enough to take advantage of an opportunity. Mm-hmm. I knew this was a huge opportunity for me. if I do good in this car, it could mean it might be a real turning point in my career. I won that race in that car.
The first one.
First one.
First one.
Oh yeah, and of course PB was so excited because we competed against each other, but he didn't know if I could drive a car at Nashville is a fast, big 5-8 mile racetrack.
Yeah, big deal.
You gotta know something to win a race at Nashville. So he had made a deal with some other drivers to drive some races after that, so I didn't get to drive it every week. But at the end of '69, Steve and I got married in August of '69, and right after that, PB called me and he said, you know, he said, I've been thinking, I think I'm gonna hang up my helmet. He said, how would you like to drive my car? All the time. Holy cow. You can work in the shop, work on the trucks through the week, and you can drive the car on the weekend. Well, we had just gotten married, and Stevie was supposed to go to SMU. Her father had gone to SMU. Her grandfather had taught at SMU. That was a family tradition. Everybody goes to SMU, except Stevie, because she got married to me, and so she wasn't able to go to SMU. She had to go to Kentucky Wesleyan College in Owensboro. So I get her all, she gets all squared away at Kentucky Wesleyan, which she's not happy about, and her mom and dad sure aren't happy about, but that's what we got to do. I got a job. I never had a regular job. I'd always worked somewhere, odds and ends, and race cars. My father-in-law made me get a job, and he made me go to college. I didn't want to go to college. Man, I wanted to race. So I spent one semester at Kentucky Wesleyan, and by now I'd gotten the call from PB. So I started coming to Franklin to kind of get acclimated to my new surroundings, my job and a car that I was going to drive, and this was in the off season. Well, after a few weeks of coming down, it's a 3-hour drive from Owensboro then, down here. Leave Owensboro in the morning, drive down here, work all day, and drive back home at night. Yeah. Because Stevie was having no part of leaving Owensboro. Yeah. I did that for a while, and finally I said, honey, I can't do this anymore. Let's move to Franklin. I'm going to be right here. I'm enrolled in school here. This is what I'm going to do. I said, well, we need to think about that. I said, we need to move to Franklin. So I talked her into coming down one weekend with me and spending a weekend in Franklin. She fell in love with the town. We moved to Franklin at the beginning of 1970, winter of '69 in the early part of '70. Started driving PB's car every week, and that was my big stepping stone.
The rest is history.
The rest was history.
Now, Dr. Charla Long heads our College of Professional Studies, and we have a very successful adult degree completion program. If you'd like to come back and become a Lipscomb alum, we'd love to have you.
College, college is the greatest thing anybody can do. A college degree opens a lot of doors. And I wish, and you always think at the time, I don't really need that. But when you grow older and you find a profession and you think so many times, I've thought so many times, if I'd only gone to college, if I've been able to accomplish what I've done without going, what could I have done if I had gone? Yeah. I mean, and I think that's the way you have to look at it. You can be successful in life and in business without going to school, but how much more successful could you be if you did? Yeah. And I always think about that because there are so many things that come up that have come up in my career. Your vocabulary. Sometimes there's you want to use words and to express things, and you're limited, or your math skills, which are terribly important in racing. Geometry and all that in racing is critical. The more you know, the better you do. Well, I was just kind of a hands-on guy, look at, I know, it was pretty good. So those are skills those are things that I wish I had.
Well, I think you're probably way too modest and too humble because you had a very successful business today, businesses, I guess, and you've been very smart at how you market DW. You've become a brand. Well, and so from that standpoint, it looks to me like you could probably teach the college class, not worry about sitting in it.
I have a couple of golden rules. One of them is stick to what you know. I know cars. I've been around cars my whole life. I love to race cars. I built cars. I built engines. So I'm a kind of a gearhead kind of a guy. And I worked at a Chevrolet dealership in Owensboro. That was my part-time job because I could work there and race too. And so I've been around the car business my whole life, and I always thought when I was growing up in Owensboro, I love a new car. You know, back in the day, even now, when you sit down, there's just something about a new car, the smell, the feel. I always thought, man, it'd be cool to have a new car every once in a while. Now I got a whole lot full of them. So, but it was, I parlayed, again, it was your platform. You know, you get a platform. I parlayed my racing career into the car business. You know, into my Honda store, my Volvo store, my Subaru store. Now we're opening a GMC and a Buick store. Those things have come my way because of my involvement in racing. I've made a lot of great relationships. I try never to burn a bridge. I work with all the manufacturers, whether it's General Motors or Toyota, and I try to. And you're right. You are. I tell people all the time. At my age, my driving career is over with. I do TV. All I really have is my reputation of that's who I am, and that's what we market. I mean,
well, you've got all these expressions that you've become famous for. You know, in addition to the nickname DW, which is a brand in and of itself. Let me just read some of these to you, and maybe you can tell me where some of these things started. For example, I guess the one that everybody knows the best is Boogity, 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 let's go racing, boys.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's not anything you're going to read on that paper that doesn't have a story goes with it. Now, I don't know how much tape you got in this machine you have here.
We got enough.
No, but Boogity, Boogity, Boogity. I was in a meeting with my boss, David Hill. David Hill's from Australia. He's crazy. He runs Fox Sports.
This is Fox.
Yeah,
okay.
Fox Sports.
Right.
And a lot of people probably know who David is. And I love him. He's like one of my greatest best friends of all time. But he likes to shake things up, you know, whether it's in football or hockey or whatever Fox Sports is doing. He wanted to have the Fox brand on it, you know. Mm-hmm. And so we're sitting around before a race in Darlington on Saturday afternoon, a production meeting. And we'd been doing this for a little while. And he says, so what do you boys got planned for this weekend? What are we going to do? We got to shake things up a little bit, you know. We got to put the Fox brand on it. He said, DW, what do you got planned? I said, I don't know, boss, but I just hate the way we're starting these races. He said, well, what are you talking about? I said, you know, Mike Joy, well, the green flag is in the air, and they're into the first. I said, it's not very exciting, boss. I said, I'm telling you, I've been in those cars. I've been on that flag stand. I've been honorary starter a few times. That's the most exhilarating part of the race. And we're just giving it the green flag is in the air. I said, does that get you up on your feet? No. He said, come up with something. If you don't like it, think of something. I said, I'll work on it. This is just one of those God things, okay? Sunday morning, before the race at Darlington, after that meeting, I'm listening to the radio. I love country music. I've been a country music fan as a little boy. I used to listen to Grand Ole Opry on my transistor radio in Owensboro with a wire sticking out of it for an antenna. And I love country music, and I was listening to some station there in Darlington. Ray Stevens, one of my best buddies. I love Ray. We're good friends. Ray came on the radio, one of his old songs called The Streak. Here he comes, boogity, boogity. There he goes, boogity, boogity. That's it. That's it. So I just had, you know, I couldn't just do boogity. I said, boogity, boogity, boogity. You gotta have a tag, you know. Let's go racing, boys. I mean, I about cut myself to death shaving. I couldn't wait to get out.
Yeah.
So we go in the booth, and Mike Joy's real conservative. He's been doing a leading announcer for years, so he is the professional. Me and Larry's a crew chief from Alabama, and I'm a race car driver from Tennessee. So we're a little bit irreverent at times in the television booth. So we're getting ready to start the race. And I said, boys, let me do it. I got this one. And they're both looking at me like, well, okay, what are you going to do? I said, just watch this. Car, they come off turn 4, and that green flag goes in there. And, boogity, 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 let's go racing, boys. And Larry and Mike look at me like, have you lost your mind? What was that? Where'd that come from? I said, I don't know. It just popped out. Well, you know what? I thought, maybe that wasn't such a great idea after all. The next week, all week long, from my bosses to the people that covered this, other people in the sport, what a great way to start a race. So it became a blessing and a curse.
And a trademark.
And a trademark.
And a brand.
We had to trademark it because, you know, things like that get out of hand if you don't.
Sure.
But anyway, I'd say it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that I did it because it's turned out to be kind of my trademark. But by the same token, now I can't walk into any restaurant anywhere in this country and somebody's in the back, "Hey, D.W., give us some boogity, 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 will you?" I mean, everywhere I go. So,
Yeah.
But that's how that came about.
So I got to ask you about one more. There's a whole list of these here, and I really wish we
If you
had
didn't
time.
have a lot of time, don't ask me.
Well, we got time, but I'm afraid we'll
I gotta
wear
go.
the viewers out. I got to ask you about this thing about amphibious. Some drivers are amphibious. Now, tell me, how is a driver of a race car amphibious?
Well, it's what's the right word? Not amphibious.
Ambidextrous.
Ambidextrous. Yeah,
Okay, that's what you meant.
That's
what
the
you
right
meant to
word.
say.
But I always thought it was so funny because I was watching some kid and being interviewed, and he was like a freshman in somewhere. I don't remember where it was, and he was so excited, and that's what he said. He said, "The coach said I'm going to be really good because I'm amphibious." I like that. I think I can use that.
Worked out okay.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to run out of time here, and I know you've got other meetings today, and I want to respect that, Darrell. But I just want to, you're a real hero to so many people. You're a Christian man. You're a gentleman. You're a businessman, successful businessman. You must look at our country and have thoughts about where we are as a nation and
man.
where we're.
You would ask me about that, wouldn't you?
Well, I just want to hear what you're thinking about it. I'm concerned about kind of where we are. We're in the midst of an election season right now,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of division and
Yeah, there is.
not a whole lot of unity. And I just wonder where do you think we can go from here as a nation to regain the status that we've all enjoyed, and it really blessed us in our adult lifetimes.
See, one of the things you just said is, it bothers me when politicians, even I guess preachers to some degree, when they say in a prayer they say "God bless America," and I get a chill almost when I hear that, particularly from politicians. How can God bless America if you won't let Him? Mm-hmm. And God, I mean, you take God out of everything that we hold sacred, everything that we think as American citizens are important, and you want to take God's name out, and then you have the audacity to say, and God bless America. Mm-hmm. I wish God could bless America, but if my people will turn from their ways and seek my face, well, we need to start seeking His face. We're in trouble. This country's at a serious crossroads, and this election is a defining moment. If we go 4 more years in the direction we've been, our country is becoming, we're a world power. The dream of everyone is to live in America, to be an American citizen, the American dream. And that dream is getting taken away from us. And you can't, I don't want to, I'm not going to say it's because of the Democrats. I'm not going to say it's because of the Republicans. But obviously, we got to quit making excuses for politicians that make bad decisions. And that's exactly what's happened the last 4 years. I've been watching these last few days, and quite honestly, the opposition being the Democrats, have served up some pretty nice nuggets, if you ask me, going into the debate tonight. When some of I think there are little windows into how people think. When somebody says you didn't build it, that's a little window. When a party takes God out of their platform, that's a little window. Mm-hmm. When you see the vice president say, that you've been in chains, that's a little window. When he says the middle class has been buried the last 4 years, that's a little window. All these little windows open up into a big picture of how the people in power right now think. And we've got to change course. We got to. And we're not going to do it by being mamby-pamby. I honestly believe that Paul Ryan and Romney could make a huge difference. I also believe it's like going to a doctor. It might be painful because of the shape we're in. We're broke, and we're every day we go further and further into debt to the point where I don't know people that think we'll never get out of the situation we're in. And I think if we if we don't make a change right now, then I think if we're sitting here 4 years from now, you and I will be looking at a totally different country than we live in today.
Darrell, thanks for coming to Lipscomb today. It's an honor to have you.
It's good to be here. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I know my stories are long, but hey, I'm 65 years old, and they didn't just happen overnight. So just thank you for bearing with me.
It has been an honor to have Darrell Waltrip on campus today. DW, it's a real thrill, and thank you for your friendship with Lipscomb, Darrell. We appreciate that.
Sir.
And thank you for watching Conversations with the Dean. We hope you'll join us again soon.